Hello! Greetings from the land of Luna. This is Julia Butterfly. I guess some of you probably know about what's happening up here and others of you don't, so I'm going to give you a rundown of what's going on. I'm calling you from 180 feet up in an incredibly beautiful ancient redwood tree that we've named Luna. She's also known as the Stafford Giant. She's over 1,000 years old, and she's on top of a hillside that is extremely steep and unstable right above the town of Stafford, California.
All of the land that we own here is zoned by the state of California for timber production. That's all we can use it for. We can't build condominiums, break it up into real estate. We grow and harvest trees.
You know, these guys, the tree huggers, they got all the time in the world to conquer this one tree. I'm trying to rig trees, you know, for production every day. You know, it's not like a game to me. It's making a living.
My one thing that I would tell the world is love. That's all there is to it. Everything that fits under everything else fits under love. And that we don't have to. But if we want to heal the wounds in our earth, and we want to heal the wounds in each other, and we want to have a beautiful future, we need to do our very, very best to make sure that every thought, every word, every action is done in love.
Julia speaks from a place both physically, I mean literally in terms of where she is, and also spiritually in terms of who she is, that is very unique and very striking, and gives her a kind of clarity and plain speech that frankly a lot of us wish we had. I wish I had. You know, I end up talking more about policy and less about experience, more about regulations and less about what it actually is like to bend your life into the shape of the place in which you live.
See, there are many ways to express love. You don't have to climb and sit in a tree for days and days and days to express love.
Julia is there in that tree because of something that touched her deep within her being. That's why she's there. I don't know that she had an environmental conscience. They had an awareness growing up in our home, but I don't know that we had a conscience. And all I can say is that something touched her to move her to do that. She wasn't recruited, I don't believe.
You know, part of my incredible experience up here has been not entering the world of quote-unquote down there and staying only in the world of up here. Because it gives me an objectivity from what's happening down there, but it ties me in to the reality of what's down there through nature. You know what I'm saying? Like, when my feet touch the ground, I enter the man's world again. You know, human's world. But by staying in the tree, I am completely enwrapped and encased in nature's world.
The only things I really need to do in order to call myself Earth First is adhere to three basic principles. I have to be biocentric. That's sort of what Earth First means. Secondly, I have to make no compromise in defense of Mother Earth. That's written on every T-shirt we have, just about. And the third principle is that you have to take some kind of action in order to be an Earth First.
Civil disobedience has been around forever. Civil disobedience brings with it a certain price to pay if you do civil disobedience, and that's if you violate the law, then you have to figure that you're going to be arrested.
There are three methods in which Earth First decides whether to do an action and how it's going to be done. Sometimes we use consensus. People get around in a circle, decide, hey, we're going to do a big rally on September 14th. We're going to try to get 10,000 people there. Maybe we'll have arrests, maybe we won't. We'll work it out. Then there's, we make decisions by constituency. And they find a constituency of people who are interested in doing their action. And then, lastly, there are the individual acts of bravado. At this point, what Julia Butterfly is doing, in part, is an individual act of bravado, but even those individual acts still require a very large support team to support every aspect of these actions.
we kind of joke up here about woo, you know, people loving the forest and holding hands and having circles and doing stuff that a lot of people laugh at. But what Julia is, in a sense, is she's this kind of perfect mix between wisdom and intellectual knowledge of the issues, as well as this kind of sense of woo and love and spirituality. And she ties it all together in kind of this seamless flow.
I think she is very passionate about her cause. And I think she is doing something she truly believes in. I think that's fine. Except for it's really impacting the lives of people that I care about a great deal. Not that I don't care about Julia. You know, she's a human being and I respect her. But I also know that I have friends of mine who are having trouble making ends meet because they can't get to work. And that affects me too.
Well, I live in 2479 Wrigley Road, which is in Humboldt County, just barely south of Eureka. Well, I came up here in 1950 to go to school at Humboldt, and fell in love with the area and didn't want to leave. The logging has been going on here since the 1800s, and I moved here knowing I was moving into a logging area, a timber harvest area, and I expected to see logging, and I have seen logging over the last 40 years. As a matter of fact, I worked in the woods out here when I was going to school. I worked for the old Hammond Lumber Company over on the South Fork of Elk River.
People over the last 100 years have settled in these valleys because, you know, for many reasons, agricultural reasons. You know, they're good places to grow apples, for instance, on the Elk River. And they're just there. These folks aren't environmentalists. They are the people who are there. There's also loggers of all kinds, people who are employees of timber corporations, and teachers and lawyers and people who work in department stores and all the rest. It's just a cross-section of humanity, Humboldt County style.
Are you cold, forlorn, and hungry? Are there lots of things you lack? Is your life made up of misery? Then dump the bosses off your back.
Things were pretty good in the so-called old days prior to Max Sam's takeover. And since then, a lot of things have changed. So definitely, like, we're dealing with two different animals here, so to speak. Back when Max Sam took over, they gated everything off, locked it up, threw boulders around so you couldn't drive around, you can't see any of the land. In fact, it's sewed up pretty tight right now. So I am sure, like myself, many of us miss the old conduct the Pacific Lumber used to have.
We're not against logging. We're not against cutting at all. I mean, this is a timber community. It's a timber-dependent community. And what we want to see is responsible management of the timberlands.
Yeehaw!
Spruce, Sawyer, Fisher were some of the original people of this tree sit back in October. Fisher and Sawyer were part of the main people of building this platform and designing this platform and deciding where to put it.
So we just designed it down here and put it together, and it, you know, it came apart, and it was just a big sheet of plywood with 2x4s that bolted together, and we hauled it up there one night under the full moon, all the stuff.
And that's where we gave ourselves the name the Lunatics and named Luna, and that was the first night I ever was there too.
This load's ready to go.
Wow. There was a point when she was sitting in the tree for a period of time where people were trying to decide whether or not we wanted to support her. And there was a lot of back and forth and back and forth.
And I said, you know, what are we going to really get out of this? Should we put the limited amount of resources that we have? And at that time there weren't many. Like I said, people didn't have food to eat. They didn't have places to live. We weren't doing very good at all with the resources that we had for ourselves. Yet this tree sit's going on. It's being supported by a handful of people. who really had nothing to support it with.
They were concerned about my safety, not only for myself, but for how it would reflect on Earth First. Because this is an Earth First action, I am definitely a part of the Earth First organization. And so in that aspect, I'm definitely a part of the Earth First organization. And so what I do completely reflects on Earth First. But I knew in my heart that to come down at the time they wanted me to would have been a disrespect to Luna, would have been a disrespect to the Earth, and would have actually been a disrespect to the Earth First movement. Because basically it would have been saying, okay, all we're doing is playing in trees, and when it gets too hard for us to handle, we're going to come down. So all you have to do is wait us out. And that to me was like such a weak position. I was like, what power do tree sits have if we're just going to come down when things get rough? And I just couldn't be a part of that. And so I told them no. I sent a letter down to them saying I appreciated their concerns and I understood where they were coming from, but that in the ultimate level of things, that if they needed to, they could come and get all their gear, they could get their cell phone, they could take everything that they needed, and they could leave me up here with one rope. And I would even pay them for the rope and harness if I needed to, so that I could get out of this tree when the time came. A lot of times on interviews that I've done, people say, well, you know, who are your heroes? And some of my best heroes are my support team. They do everything from bringing me food and supplies, ropes, tarps, things of that nature, to helping spread the word to the media and getting some media people actually up to the tree who have come up into the tree.
Yeah, we're a tight group. A lot of people feel like it's Julia by herself, this woman in a tree, and it is to a certain extent, but a tree sit is the people doing the ground support and the people sitting and the people running media, and it's the whole thing. It's the action involves many people.
There are people going up there practically every day. She hasn't had a free day probably since maybe last Saturday. There might not have been anyone up. And so, you know, we pretty much have this trade route, the supply line, that's you know, between us down here on the ground in the community and her up there in the tree.
What are you bringing up?
Batteries and food and water and people.
Love. Mail?
Yeah, lots of mail.
Well, there's a whole lot of people who are crazy about her and really think she's a hero and pretty much hang on everything she has to say. There's a lot of people like that. Mm-hmm.
Is that everybody?
No. There are some people who think she's a crazy girl up in the tree, and given a chainsaw and a little space, they could get her out of the tree.
She's been there forever.
Yeah, if you could talk to her, what would you tell her?
Well, she's proved her point, and it's time for her to go on.
To hear her talk, she speaks in cosmos speak.
No, I'm a logger, and I lost my fucking job over all this.
Have you really?
So.
How did that work?
How did that work?
Yeah, seriously, I mean, because...
Everything got cut back and I lost my fucking job. I think she's a fucking nut.
You know, if you flip back through the articles, how many of them have said the crazy woman in the tree, or is she crazy?
Do you think it's nuts?
No, I think it's fantastic. I think it's amazing. I think that there's been a couple of times where I would have liked to have been warm and safe and secure, but I don't think it's nuts at all. I think that it's beautiful. It's one of the most amazing experiences of my life.
Are you up there still by your strength and will? Yeah. The TV news took their camera crews down to Scotia Town to interview some people on the streets there. They say go ahead and cut it down, just cut it down. If she gets hurt or killed, we don't care. Julia Butterfly Hill, I guess they just can't see the forest for the tree. Yeah. Julia Butterfly Hill, it's more than I could do.
Hey, Butterfly. How you doing?
Awesome.
This is Shane and Slam and all the guys that cut around there. Yeah, we're up here now. Yeah, just need to stop the greed. There's just everybody wants to get rich. Yeah. Alrighty. It's good talking to you. Alright, bye-bye.
When Maxam took over, he really upped production, and people started seeing a lot more timber going down in different areas. And I mean, it was a big, I couldn't give you some exact amounts that was logged before, but I know it's close to double over what it was before.
We have seen too much of the cut and run type of operations, and some of this from large corporations. Louisiana Pacific, for instance, just pulled out of Mendocino County. And if you've ever flown over Mendocino County, you know what they have done to Mendocino County, and you know why they're pulling out. There is nothing left. And we're afraid that some of these other companies are doing the same sort of thing. Make it quick and get out.
The only reason that a large timber company would go in and clear cut a conifer forest anyway is for quick cash flow. And in order to quickly replenish that conifer crop, these timber companies will go back in and use large amounts of very toxic herbicides and try to convert it from a very diverse, multiple species, multiple age forest into a single species tree plantation or tree farm.
It has very little to do with what's regenerating this time around. It has to do with forestry is a very long-term practice, basically. It's something where you need to be thinking about what's going to happen on that particular site 100 or 200 years from now and how it's going to affect future generations, because forests and their interaction with humans it's very important. I mean, we get our water, our watershed, our wildlife habitat. All of these different things are the other benefits of forests.
I can remember years ago, over 30 years ago, when the fish used to come up here, you'd see hundreds and hundreds of them. Now you come down here, there's not a fish one to be had. And this is an example of what's going on, the siltation coming from the upper regions of freshwater.
This is a shelf of mud. Ordinarily the bank would go straight down here. All of my life it went straight down into a deep pool. And this right here was a drop-off to rock. Now it is just mud. And this is mud. Ooey gooey, solid, ucky mud.
The trees here play an absolutely crucial role in keeping the hillsides in their place. I mean, the trees have been growing on these hillsides for tens of thousands of years and help give the hillside stability. They draw the water out of the hillside so that the soil doesn't become overly saturated. When you take the trees away and the soil becomes more saturated with water, it becomes more muddy. It's almost like a pudding, and it can slide off the hillside.
One of the claims that the industry makes is that these problems here are generated by rain. Well, it normally rains here. As far back as I can remember, it has always rained here in the winter. Of course, if we didn't have any rain, we wouldn't have any runoff, and we wouldn't have any problems. If we didn't have any mountains, we wouldn't have any landslides. It's just as simple as that.
It was about approximately 7 o'clock in the morning. I was awake but laying in bed, and I heard huge explosions, like bombs going off outside my house. And I got up and I looked out my daughter's window, and I'd seen some of the trees just above my house here were snapping off like matches and slamming the ground at just a super high rate of speed. So I ran up to the top of my driveway, which is above my house here, and just in time to see what looked like about an 18 to 20 foot giant beaver dam of logs and trees, and it was swelling very much like a child's water balloon underneath a faucet. This thing was just swelling and growing, and as it was swelling with all these, well, looked like hundreds of trees all woven in, they were snapping off the trees behind me here. You can see a few of them that are left, and they were just hitting the ground at just great rate of speed. I just was amazed to see this. It broke, and when it did, it broke towards my neighbor's house. I was lucky. I stayed just in front of it, and I got them out of their house before the debris flow came through. Rushed back over to my house. I got my daughter out, and I got my neighbors out in front of me. And so the flow went ahead and moved through town, and there was enough noise and enough trees snapping off that everybody else managed to get out of their houses in time.
couple
I had
of your
to
old
leave my
tapes, if I
home.
could dig them up on my tape
I didn't know if I was going to have a home when I got back. It was heartbreak.
There has been no attribution of cause for that landslide. We have had many wet winters after having a series of very dry winters. The soil gets saturated and it moves.
You know, I'm here fighting for these forests because these forests are incredible. They're sacred and they're precious and they're beautiful. And I'm here fighting for the people, you know, the town of Stafford, the people who no longer have a house because of what these people have done. You know, this is what's important to me right now, but it's a part of the bigger picture. It is a part of that body of life. And what I'm talking about is that all of these things, their homes, the homes of the animals in the forest, people across the country and around the world, and everything of the world, cannot be healed unless we do things in a positive way. And the most incredible amount of positive way that we can do anything is in love. That if we go to do something, we think, is this a loving way to do this? And if it's not, you know, if we just even think that, it makes us pay attention to what we're doing. If we actually try and think love every time we do something, it brings the focus of what we're doing instead of just not thinking about it and just going about our business and doing things the way we've been doing it forever just because that's the way we've been doing it. By focusing, trying to focus everything on love, it makes you focus really on what you're doing, and it makes you take a second look. It makes you take a second thought. And that's where things are going to heal. That's where things are going to change. Because instead of just going about doing what we do without thinking about the consequences, we think love, love, love. And if we're thinking something positive, then the results that begin happening will be positive without us necessarily even having to take an action towards that positive end. It's just going to happen. By focusing on love, the other things are just going to fall into place, and it's going to become a part of our natural existence. It's not going to be something we have to work at. It's just going to flow when we think love.
Well, I mean, they've got things that they want. They want to save the big trees, the big old trees, and it's a really emotional issue with them. It's a cause. It's almost like a religion. As long as it's just not acceptable, and they don't understand but the good side, and they see all the bad, we continue to have this frankly civil disorder.
Well, the typical thing you get, of course, the easiest thing is the trespassing on private property. If you trespass on someone else's property and they don't want you there, there's a law against that. The other things that happen is people block access to property, block roadways, prevent the carrying on of business by chaining themselves to equipment so that can't be used.
As you can see, this car has planted itself here in defense of Mother Earth, and we'll have Mouse here locked down to the gate in the car there, and I'm locked inside, and then Maya's locked on the other side of me.
Every time you respond to something, it's different. They're different people, we're in different locations, the device is a little bit different. Someone's commitment might be a little bit stronger or less strong than another's.
Well, one, they could negotiate with us and give us what we're asking for. That's the only way I could see that they could get us out.
I mean, the goal is to get the person to comply and release.
No, don't open it! Damn, you guys! Cut it out! They really don't need to be doing this.
So basically what we do is we take the liquid out of the can and we apply it to a gauze pad and flush or flood the eye area, the outside exterior around the eye with the OC product, which causes the discomfort.
You have to remember that these people are not making any money. They're all living together in one house. One of the reasons a lot of Earth Firsters are young is because after a certain point in your life, you desire a certain level of comfort, which does not happen when you live in one house with one bathroom with 14 people living in it and you work all the time.
commitment.
Integrity, bravery, and holding themselves to a very high standard.
Discipline.
High ethical standards and high physical standards. I mean, they have lots of the excesses of very young people.
I personally think they're all a little misguided. I mean, each and every one of them is picking a little bitty window of all the environmental problems in the world, which they're a part of as much as you or I or anybody else, and they're saying, you can't do this. You know, they drive their cars down the roads. They probably all have wood in their houses. They wipe their butts on toilet paper. They read books. They use all the products. They use plastics and steels and metals and aluminums and glass and everything. If you really want to be a true environmentalist, you better strip yourself buck-ass naked, run up the hills, and turn over chunks and stuff and eat little grubs.
I think he's a tree topper is his actual classification, you know. But what he does is he like if we have a tree sit and he's able to get to us, he will lower the platform down or tear down the platforms, you know, and destroy the tree thing, and then arrest the people that are in the tree. You know, that's basically the sheriffs have deputized him.
First, what we do, we just go up and take their food away and their clothes and their water, and then climb back down, and they'd sit there for 4 or 5 hours, and okay, we're coming down, and that worked for a few years. Well, then they got a little bit trickier and started going up higher and getting limbs below them and putting traverses between the trees where they could run stuff out. And now, you know, they use mountain climbing techniques, which is different than what I use. You know, I use a logger's belt, and I pretty much stay in the tree.
He's got these spikes on his shoes. They spike into the tree, and he has this chain that goes around, and it attaches. He's got a harness, and it goes through these loops on the back.
So I stretch all this rigging out, and I put my spikes on my feet, and then I flip the chain, and it climbs up a ways, and then I step up.
And then we see climber Dan on the other tree. Climbing up the tree, he's got his chain, he's ready to go over there. And then I climbed up to the rope to the cargo net at the top. And I took everything out of the cargo net, because they always climb up the cargo net and they try to get our stuff. They want our sleeping bags and our tarps and our water. So I took it all out of the tarp and I took it up further above the tree, and I hung it on the branches so he couldn't get it when he got up to the cargo net.
But once I took my pocket knife out and started cutting the bottom of that cargo net and pulling her shit out from underneath her, now if it was me, I'd step off there, grab onto a limb, clip in. Was she willing to fall and die, and am I willing to I told her, I can test your conviction right here. I can just start cutting this net. But then I thought to myself, what the hell? You know, what if the dumb shit actually waits too long, doesn't grab, or decides to be a martyr, and then I've killed some 22-year-old girl, splattered her all over the ground, and I got to live with that, and over, you know, what the hell? I mean, she's in one stupid tree. Hell, Horowitz just sold 1 million of them, you know? I mean, so what do I care if she wants to sit in that one?
So I asked him, Climber Dan, how come you don't just lower me out of the tree? You just get rid of me. He said, well, I don't like to be up this high. I don't want to be up this high. And he complained the whole time. He's going, this is too high. It's too high. I'm just trying to feed my wife and family. I don't want to be here.
I'll go anywhere from 40 to maybe 120 feet. It's the highest I've ever had to put a cable in a tree. Chasing these tree huggers, I went up there. That orange gal, she must have been 275 feet up the stupid tree.
But we beat him. That was the first time we ever beat Climber Dan.
This is my sleeping bag that folds out, and then I roll it up during the day so that I can move around and do other things. But this is my baby sack to keep my sleeping bag dry because the edges of the platform leak, and this platform is so small that my feet hang over the edge. So this keeps my feet dry. And the sleeping bag's inside. And this is my office all shoved into the corner. My pens and scissors, and in this box is all my writing things, and this is my phone that I do my interviews with, and my pager that I get tons of pages so that that's how I do my work. And this is also my kitchen area. It's my everything area. It's an efficiency apartment in the sky. This is my pot that I cook everything with. I just have one pot and one cup, and I do everything in that. And here's my stove hanging up. It's got a base, and I set it down, and I light it, and I cook. And my hand crank radio, what did I do with that? What did I do? Oh yeah. Back here. This is what I do to hear the news and to listen to music while I'm working. And it's powered by a crank in the back. Wind it up.
Power 96.
And it plays. So anyway, stove, pot, office, bed. It's not much to show.
This is not a storybook. This is not, I mean, late at night, it gets pretty lonely, pretty cold up there, and, you know, it's not that romantic, you know, it really isn't.
And then on the night of the worst storm, where one major branch out there and 3 major branches behind me were completely ripped off, the tarps right above your head collapsed, and sleet and hail were flying in through the tarps were all shredded. I thought I was going to die. And I grabbed onto her right here where our branch is, and I clung to her, and I was like, oh my God, Luna, I'm going to die, I'm going to die. And I didn't want to die, but at the same time, I was like, you know, if I'm going to die, I can't think of a better way to live and to die than doing what I believe in. And it's so much better than the way a lot of people live and die in our world now, you know. And I was really happy about that, but I was so scared because I was like, I want to be strong for you, Luna. I can't even be strong for myself. What am I going to do? And she spoke to me. It was the first time I had heard her in a voice. And she said, Julia, think of the trees. And I started laughing, and I was like, Luna, of course I'm thinking of the trees. That's why I'm up here. And she said, no, Julia, think of the trees in a storm. And as the picture came into my mind, she continued speaking with me. And she said, in a storm, Julia, trees don't try and stand up straight and strong. Those trees that try too hard, or those limbs that try too hard to stand up straight and strong will break. The trees that allow themselves to be blown with the wind make it through. She said, now's not the time for you to be strong for me, and now is not the time for you to be strong for you. Now is the time for you to let yourself be blown with the wind, let it go, and know that I'm going to do my very best to hold you and I on this left side, and we're going to make it through. It's not really about how long I can be here. It's about it's not about what and how. This is about why. This is about why what's happening in. Yeah, well, you know, I don't know how much longer. What I'd like to say. No, I'm not going nuts up here.
During the time that I was an evangelical Christian minister, my goal was not to teach the religion of Christianity, but the spirituality of Christianity. And so I would like to think that the spiritual concepts is what got across to her.
But when I was around 15, I started breaking away from the Christian upbringing because I realized that spirituality in any form of organization was no longer spirituality. It was organization, organized forms of religion was a confine to hold my spirituality within a box of what I could and could not do. And my spirituality, the pull that I was feeling, was something so much broader than that.
She's going to know more about Julia when this is done with than most people know about themselves in a lifetime. I really believe that. And so, yeah, I'm kind of jealous of her spiritual journey.
I never got along with my family, ever. I was always in trouble. I was always getting my butt beat. Almost every day my mother and I got in an argument, and I would get punished for disrespecting my elders. My mother and I just never saw eye to eye on anything. I'm very much like both my mother and my father, so I understand them both a lot. Because my mother's very needy. She has to talk about everything. She has to be around you all the time. Always has to be touching and patting, you know, all these things. And I'm a lot like my father when I like my space. And it's interesting because here I am talking to people all the time, and maybe that's the part of my mother. But I also have been able to thrive in a tree sit by myself because I like to be by myself.
I would love to find that quality that she has touched, and that's something that she can't, you know, reach out and lay her hand on my head and say, "Be thou made whole," and all of a sudden I can start loving, you know. But I hope to touch some of that.
I think that the company is absolutely bewildered by her persistence, and I know I've seen some film footage of the security folks that they sent up to guard the base of the tree. It seems like the security folks developed a real affection for her too. So it's I don't know. It's a situation that has almost swept a lot of the old rules away. It's a situation. It's a very new situation where everybody, I think, is having to operate in kind of a strange new world of facts and relationships.
Once the story appeared in the Los Angeles Times on the front page of the style section, I received numerous calls from members of the media, from everything from CNN to hard copy. I've received hundreds of letters from people who can identify with her. I don't know why this is different than any other time that someone has sat in a tree and has said the same message.
I didn't know what to expect. I thought she might just be some wood nymph up there, you know, hanging out in a tree.
I'm more like a doctor, you know. I've been around, and I don't get that much of a personal connection, you know. Like I do and I don't, but I can't get personally involved in that way in a story that I do. You know, I've done a lot over the years. You know, I've seen people born and seen people die. I don't necessarily let it grab me personally. I have a job to do.
But every one of them ends up leaving a different person. You can kind of feel it in them as the things progress, and they kind of, you know, when they look down and they go, whoa, I'm up this high, you know, and that kind of thing, it starts working on them, and so every one of them have changed.
She obviously has this essence and this youthful vigor and this openness. It reminds me a lot, you know, of the 60s. People were very naive protesting the Vietnam War, but it did something.
But that simple act of civil disobedience, just like somebody sitting in the back of a bus, just like Rosa Parks, can ignite everything and everybody.
You know, every step of the way here, I think, okay, I can't do any more. And I was joking. I was like, you know, it could be yours for 1995. She lobbies, she campaigns, she interviews, she lives in a tree through all types of weather. Order now and get a free tree thrown in. You know, I mean, it's just really intense.
The Headwaters controversy started about almost 11 years ago. And there's been numerous efforts, both in the federal and state legislature. There have been ballot initiatives. But finally, we reached an agreement in March of this year where approximately 7,500 acres will pass into public ownership and kept for preservation for the future.
The Headwaters deal is kind of a resolution brokered by high-level politicians to buy those redwoods from the company and give them a habitat conservation plan, which is fundamentally a license to kill endangered species that would govern the rest of their ownership for the next 50 years. And because it was brokered between high-level politicians that were seeking to please the company and the company itself, they end up getting an exorbitant amount of money. And this permit to kill endangered species, which has been written in the most broad way to allow, you know, absolute carte blanche to devastate endangered species habitat for the next 50 years.
The tree Luna that Julia Butterfly has been sitting in is symbolic and representative of the thousands of acres of old growth and ancient forest that are going to be sacrificed under this deal. That hillside is symbolic and representative of the innumerable hillsides that fall under no protection whatsoever in this habitat conservation plan and are going to be sacrificed under the Headwaters Agreement. This is what the legacy of this HCP is going to look like down the road, but this is what already is happening.
But after it went down, the community was pretty disheartened, the local community, really disgusted, really feeling beat and tired. It's been 12 years of people going through, living in the woods month after month and being out in front of chainsaws day after day and going through all the violence brought about by Max Sam. And so they were just really disheartened. But then I just prayed, and anytime I pray I get an answer. I don't always get the answer I want or the answer I think I'll get, but I got one, and it was, Julia, sometimes you get so caught up in what you're struggling against that you forget what you're standing for. And what you're standing for is love and respect for all life, and that's something that all the corporations and government of the world cannot take away from you.
Earth First is a circle, there are no points. And she has inadvertently become a point. And there's going to be a lot of just automatic reflexive desire to take the point off, just because there are no points. And I don't think it necessarily has to do with whether she's productive or not. It has to do with the fact that there's a bunch of other people sitting in other trees who aren't getting that attention, and she is.
The thing that's happening with Julia is that she, like it or not, she's not doing an individual action. All of this activism has been collective, and it has to be collective. And at the point when one person starts to feel like they're carrying the movement, or when it starts to be that one person actually is carrying the movement, then that's, it's just gotta stop.
Now, if Earth First hadn't done all the actions that we've done in the past, and all the publicity, good, bad, and indifferent, all the actions, all the things, Julia could have gone up in the tree, but there wouldn't be no one would really recognize what that was. And I don't know if Julia really recognizes that. I think that the fact that she does feel spiritually called on, there's a little bit of a difficulty when you're called on by the spirit to participate in consensus process.
It's like, I'm alive, I'm in the forest, it's okay. It's so hilarious, it's just nuts, all this craziness.
I'm concerned about her welfare, and I've encouraged her to come down. I've wrote a letter to her mother and asked that she probably exert some parental control and see whether or not she could encourage her to come down. But we talk probably every week.
So much has been put into Luna right now that I don't think that anyone can imagine walking away from it and watching that tree get cut. At the same time, we're dealing with a company which is one of the most trenchant, hardball negotiating businesses out there, and they have gotten to where they've gotten in ownership of this forest and the ability to cut a lot of it down because they've been such trenchant, intransigent negotiators.
We began to feel that with the media attention that we did have, with the public support that was there, we would be able to put enough public pressure on the Pacific Lumber Company to agree to our terms to protect that hillside and to protect Luna, which has always been at the heart of this action, one of its original goals and one of the goals that's ran through it from the start.
How can you present, quote, terms to someone when you're trespassing and breaking the law and you're in a tree on property that you don't own? I'll tell you what the terms are. Come down. We're not forcing her to stay there.
A poem I wrote. I have crested snow-capped mountains, and I have wept upon the fallen valleys. Everything in between carries me, pushes me onward, upward, towards the moon, the stars, infinity. That's what my emotions have been like. It has been the depths of, oh my God, how can this world be this sad and this misguided and this have such huge holes within themselves? And then days where I'm just like laughing hysterically up at the top of Luna, dancing on the top of Luna and just going, yes! Thank you, universe, thank you, and everything in between. It's a roller coaster beyond belief.
Julia is the quintessential example of one human being who says, I can do something, who does not hide behind this this mantra, this painful mantra, well, I'm just one person, what can I do?
Well, she's a symbol. I think she's a marker for the group that are trying to make that valiant stand in their own way. She's certainly done, a job of, I think she's still in the tree, isn't she?
I was in the hardware store with these tarps and under my arms, just thinking to myself, new tarps. Looks like she's staying for a while longer. And it was just great to hear her, feeling so good and so strong up there.
My goals were to do everything in my power to protect Luna and make the world aware and use that awareness to bring about change. And my God, have we made the world aware over and over. I cannot believe. there's still mass amounts of media coming in, so much that I have to turn some of them away because I'm only one human being and I can't do it all. And so I feel like we've already met the goals that I had set, but I have not come down yet because I don't feel that the same prayer that guided me up is guiding me down yet. That's why I'm going to come down, not because I've given up, but because I'm going to wake up one morning and I'm going to pray, and that inner voice that guided me up here is going to say, Julia, it's time now. You've done your work up there, now it's time to bring it down here.
Julia has managed to rise above the criticism and the negative things. That challenge all humans. And somehow or another that love has transcended all that she grew up with and all that she meets in the world. And even though she's meeting it with the very, stones are being thrown at her in one sense of the word, but she rises above it. And that's a powerful challenge to me.
Someone said, Julia, what would you tell someone that hasn't had the inspiration like you've had? What would you tell them? And I said, I would ask them to look into a child's eyes, look into the very soul in their eyes, and realize that if we can make a small sacrifice, do some brave act, we can change that child's future forever. That our actions or our inactions today will change that child's life and that child next. That we have the power to leave them a legacy better than what was left for us.
We can hope and we can pray that someday the ancient trees will still be here to drink the morning mist and the fern-filled clay, and they can stand and they can face the golden sunrise instead of a chainsaw blade. Julia Butterfly Hill, are you up there still? A vision to fulfill, yeah. Julia Butterfly Hill, it's more than I could do, and I look up to you, yeah. Julia Butterfly Hill.
Wilt u meer informatie of wilt u reageren op dit programma? Bezoek dan onze website www.icon.nl.